Hi class, this is Professor Vasone here. I just wanted to take some time to check in with you and see how you all have been doing in the course. It's been a little bit of time since we've spoken, so I just wanted to check in. So far we've spent some time learning about how we learn about death and dying. From the beginning of time when we're kids all the way through adulthood, and how all those interactions with the adults, peers, faculty, staff, teachers in our lives, all of those interactions play a role in what we learn about death and dying and how we ultimately grieve. So I feel like you got that concept down pretty well. I could tell from your posts that you all learned about death in different ways, and some of you felt like it was good and some of you felt like it was not good, but that's okay, and we are continuing to learn and develop our skills and our knowledge about death and dying even today, every day. So very good. The next chapter we talked about was, of course, the culture chapter. I think you guys really liked that one. Your posts were really positive. Thank you so much for sharing so much with us about your culture. I learned a lot about the Mexican culture and the Jewish culture, and I was really glad that you guys were able to pull from some other cultures in the textbook that you hadn't heard before. So that was wonderful. Very good. I'm glad you're reading the textbook, at least most of you are, and I want to continue to encourage you to comment on each other's posts. Those of you that have been doing that have been doing fantastic. I enjoy reading the posts. If you haven't noticed, I comment on every single one of your posts. So go back and read my comments, comment back, ask questions if you have any, but that is a really good way for me to comment on what you're sharing and kind of correct things that if you're going in the wrong direction, or commend you if you're going in the right direction. So go back, read my comments, comment back if you can, and we'd love to talk. I'd love to talk more with you about it all. I also wanted to just talk briefly about the chapter that you had to read this week. So your assignment this week was to talk about how you as a social worker would work with a client who's gone through a natural disaster, or perhaps a mass shooting, or perhaps like September 11th, terrorist attack, hurricane, tornado, anything like that, especially with the hurricane we just had and really affecting the Bahamas. I was thinking that, any of us could be asked to go, or could volunteer to go to the Bahamas or to any part of the world to help and really offer our support and help these people who are in need, really just to help them stay calm, help them focus on what they can control, and just, bring them to a side of peace, because that's really what they need at that time when they're kind of in this state of shock. So I'm looking forward to reading your posts. I haven't had a chance to read those yet, but I will today and tomorrow, and we'll comment back to you. So get those in. Those are due tomorrow night, of course, you know that. So let's talk about our advanced directive. So I've been getting a lot of questions about this, and it's actually not that hard. So I actually found my advanced directive from when I took this course many moons ago. So if you guys haven't figured out, on the Canvas page, I have actually posted you a few examples, a few documents just like this that you can print out and fill in. It's not, you're not writing a paper here. This is simply finding an advanced directive, living will, filling it out, putting your wishes in, signing it, and sending it, turning it in a PDF. It is not a paper. Do not write me a paper. I'm not going to read it. What I am looking for here is your advanced directive. So what does that mean? I think that a lot of you are confused about that. So advanced directives are meant to be available for when, at the end of your life, when you can no longer speak for yourself, if you're incapacitated somehow, you're terminally ill, you're at the end stages of life, what would you want at that time? We're talking, do you want hospice care? Do you want palliative care? Do you want your organs donated after you die? If you're living, do you want to be on a ventilator? Do you want a tracheotomy? Do you want a feeding tube? Do you want to live on machines for forever and ever? How long do you want to live on machines? How long before you would like someone to go ahead and take you off those machines? All of those things are the things that I'm looking for in this document. I want to know your wishes, your beliefs in this document. So if you find an advanced directive online, you can find the Florida one just like I did when I took my course. You can actually fill in this information. Now there is a part on here where you are to initial some things and you can make some decisions. Well, first of all, you're going to pick your healthcare surrogate, okay? Your healthcare surrogate, this is the person who's going to follow through with your wishes when you no longer can speak, when you no longer can make decisions. Your healthcare surrogate is going to have this packet, this document, and they are going to know, okay, well, I know that Danielle wants this at the end of life, so I'm going to go ahead and go ahead and do that for her, because this would be her wish if she could make her own wish. This is what gives people in your life the sense of peace that they're doing the right thing. They're doing right by you. I can't tell you how many people feel burdened to either make a decision, like an end of life decision, to pull someone off life support, to pull someone off a feeding tube, to take out the tracheotomy, to do anything for someone who's terminally ill or in a vegetative state, and they feel that they're to blame. They feel that they had to make a tough decision, and why did that person put them in that decision? Well, that's why we have advanced directives, okay? So part one, pick your healthcare surrogate. That can be anyone you want, but that person has to sign the document and that person has to agree to it and have a copy of this, okay? Step two is to do your living will. So that's where you're going to go ahead and decide, do I want to have XYZ? Do I want to have a feeding tube? Do I want to have, all the things I've already mentioned? So I want you to describe those in here. Here's the part where you're gonna initial giving your approval to certain things. When you get to a page that asks you if you want to leave any special instructions, the answer is yes. This is where I want to see you write stuff. This is where I want to see you talk about what you want. And I want you to be as specific as possible. When I wrote mine, I said, if I'm in a vegetative state, ... If I require a feeding tube, ... Okay? Do you guys get what I mean? I really want you to think about what you would feel comfortable with and what you would want at the end of your life. And this is hard. This makes you feel stuff because no one likes to think about the end of their life. But that's why we're doing this. Especially if any of you are going to be in the healthcare field, working in hospitals, hospices, you need to be able to know what this is, and you need to have been able to do one previously so that you can help other people do one. You need to be able to explain, what is this document, what does it do, and how does it work? Okay, so I think that by doing this, you will get all of that. So after you have made your specifics about end of life, there should be a piece in here about organ donation. So make sure that you talk about that as well. Organ donation is not just, lungs and heart and liver and kidneys. It also includes eyeballs and skin. And you really have to specify what you feel comfortable with donating at the end of life. You can also talk about what you'd like to do in terms of organ donation, as well as what you want to do with your body after you die. Do you want to donate your body to science? All of those things can go in here, okay? So try to be as specific as possible. I also want you to talk to your person. So if you choose your mom, your dad, your spouse, talk to them about this document. Make sure that they understand what your wishes are, because that's part of it too. It's not just, okay, professor, I wrote this document, here you go. Well, that's great, but did you talk to anyone about it? Does anyone know that you have these wishes? I think the biggest and most important thing to remember is that our lives can change in an instant. We could get in an accident tomorrow and be on life support, and no one would know what our wishes are. No one would know what we would want at the end of life because we didn't tell anyone. So this is extremely important, and we have to do this, okay? I also want to just give you a few examples as to why this assignment in particular is so important. So right now at Tidewell Hospice, I'm working with a family. The wife died recently, and the husband had to pull her off of life support. And he has mentioned it to us many times and we've talked about it, but his wife made it perfectly clear to him many years ago and throughout time that if I'm ever in this state, she actually had an aneurysm. Again, a freak thing, like you have no idea. You don't get to decide when you have an aneurysm. And it left her in a coma, on life support, on a ventilator. And she told her husband that if that ever happens to me, I want you to take me off life support as soon as possible. He did. He took her off. She died. And now he's trying to make sense of, that was painful for him to do. He had to do that and give the okay. But at the end of the day, he had this document that says, I want to be off life support as soon as possible. And so that gave him a sense of peace, a sense of, I did right by my wife. I did the right thing. And that is ultimately what this document is about. It is about making sure that our wishes are fulfilled, but it's also a gift to our loved ones so that they can do what we need without feeling guilty or without feeling burdened. And I'm not here to lie to you. People will still have a tough time making that decision, especially if they don't agree with it. So that is why this document is so important. That is why it is so important that you talk to your loved ones and you tell them, I don't want this, I do want that, so that they know. Also, you want to pick a healthcare surrogate that's actually going to go through with what you want. So if your husband is like, oh no, I would never take you off life support, I don't care if that's what you want, well then maybe he might not be the one to be your surrogate. Maybe you need to pick your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or best friend. You need to pick someone who's going to fulfill your wishes, okay? So just another thing to consider as well, in end-of-life care, many people choose to have a DNR, do not resuscitate order. If there's an accident, a car accident, an aneurysm, something that's quick that you don't get to have that last minute decision of, do you want to be a DNR or not? Many people get that decision when they're in hospice care. You won't get to make that decision. So it also needs to be in your healthcare advance directive. So when I was working in hospice, we were working with a patient who was on hospice care, but he hadn't signed the DNR yet. And we were explaining to him what would happen if he died, his heart stopped, and he has not yet signed this DNR. We would have to administer CPR, and we explained to him that we would have to be pounding on his chest to get his heart to beat. It would be possible that he would get bruising and that we might break his ribs, but we would call an ambulance and get him to the hospital to resuscitate him, and he agreed. That's what he wanted. Well, unfortunately, he died that day or the day after. We began CPR, we called EMS, and the visual of CPR on a dying person in hospice where you're supposed to die peacefully with no extreme measures like CPR, was not a good sight to see. The nurse was literally sitting on the patient, pounding on his chest, doing compressions, calling EMS. EMS comes and shocks him, families all around. And the man never came back, guys. He was not going to come back. And the way I look at that, and I did do some education with our staff because they never quite understand that people have a choice, but as social workers, we have to explain that sometimes to the staff too, not only the family. But the point was, this man could have signed that DNR. He could have made that last wish where he would have had an extremely peaceful death. But instead, because of CPR at end of life, it was a complete opposite. It was traumatic and terrible, and that is not our goal at hospice. So I tell you that story because it's something to consider in your advance directive that you might want to accept signing a DNR at the end of life so that you don't have to go through CPR, so that you don't have to be intubated, and so that you don't have to have broken ribs and maybe perhaps ultimately die anyway after all that trauma to your body. So I hope that was helpful. I hope my examples really give you some opportunity to understand what I'm looking for here. Again, this is not a paper, so do not write this in a narrative. The only narrative that should be in here is in the document itself, okay? So also, this is a week 7 assignment. I have opened week 7 in Canvas, and I have given you a variety of support materials, resources, extra things to read and look over. I've added for you, my company has done an advanced directive template. It's called My Life, My Choice. Feel free to look at that one and see if that would be one you'd like to do. Like I said, there's also some on the Canvas syllabus page, some options there to click on and fill in. Pick the one that makes the most sense to you. They're all a little different. Those of you who've been around hospice, there's also one called 5 Wishes. You can fill that out. Whichever one you want to fill out works for me. Fill it out, sign it, initial all the things, and turn it in. All right. If you guys have questions, reach out to me. I'm here. But otherwise, I will see you soon, and make sure you look at the syllabus to keep up with the rest of the assignments. All right. Talk to you soon.